Welcome everyone and welcome to a new review here on the Geek Dhaba. And today we're going to be talking about the Pakistani film Kamli. And before we get into it, I think it's time that we open the Dhaba. Kamli is a 2022 film starring Summer Qamar as the main lead. It is there's no specific genre to define it. It's an art film. It tells the story of a girl who lives in a village and how she goes about her day and how she deals with things like work and love and all this other stuff. It's I want to start off right off the bat that I really enjoyed this movie up until a point. I'll talk about that when we get to the slight bit of spoiler section. But the movie generally was a good watch. I don't think I'd watch it again, but it was a good movie to sit down, watch, enjoy. Um, it's a long movie, about almost 2.5 hours, I believe. It basically tells the story of this character Hina, who basically goes through the motions of living in a village, of how she lives with her sister-in-law, and how she goes about her day, going to work. She works as a model for paints, for a woman who paints, and played by Nimra Bucha. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Uh, but yeah, she's also in Miss Marvel, which we will eventually cover. But um, it was that story, how she goes about her day. It's really not a lot to cover in the sense that there's not a lot to discuss. It's just that it's well filmed. Like the cinematography of this movie is done really well for a Pakistani film. Most Pakistani films tend to have more over the top plots that are just grating. This isn't grating per se. It's much better in that regard. However, there are faults, but it's not to do with anything else other than the ending of the movie, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Everybody does their part so well. The acting is great. Most of the movie is incredibly well written. Um, to me, the interpretation was that this is a woman who is bound by tradition and culture and how it's just tearing her apart and how some of the cultural things in small villages just don't seem to make sense. She's bound to stay in this village in this house until her husband comes back. And her husband has been gone for about 8 years now, and no one knows where he is, where he's coming back. And they're just sitting there patiently and waiting, going, as the movie title Kamli translates to crazy, they're patiently waiting uh, and going crazy doing so. It's There are lots of little moments here. There's a moment in the movie where she thinks that her husband is back and she runs across Lord knows how far to the place where her sister-in-law says, "Oh, that's where he is. He's staying there right now. He'll be here tonight." Uh, Nothing. He's not there. Confused. It's a well-reasoned, well-acted movie. There's not a lot more to say. I mean, apart from just go watch it, there's not really a lot to say about this movie, except the ending is everything wrong with how we watch movies, in my opinion. Right? The movie has a twist ending, and spoilers ahead for anybody who wants to watch the movie and doesn't want to know the ending, so just stop watching now. The movie has a twist ending, and it's not one that I liked. It's one that I feel like ruined the whole flow of the film. The entire film is just her going crazy, uh, wanting to leave, being told that her husband actually died 8 years ago and she's just being kept here for no reason. And everybody's going crazy in this film. There are lots of crazy decisions being made, and that fits the narrative perfectly up until the point where she decides to burn down the house to escape, which is fine. What happens afterwards is the problem, where she goes into this room where she's been meeting this guy who she decides that she wants to get married to and everything. She's running into him, and everything is fine up until here, where she goes to him and says, "Time for us to go. Let's run away. Let's be together," etc. He doesn't exist, and that just really pissed me off. It could have been just another moment where he just said he was just decided that he didn't want to take her, and she could go get captured by these guys chasing her and back to her home. It's all ignored. It's just honestly, the writing in this movie is so fantastic up until this point that I'm surprised that the ending is so lazy. It didn't need a twist ending. It could have been done so well. It was going so well up until this point. It didn't need that twist ending. It would have been fine without it, but we got it anyway. And she goes ahead and she kills herself at the end, which I don't understand why, but okay, she did that. It's very akin to the folklore story that they discuss in the movie, but still, no. And I just that left a bad taste in my mouth. I enjoyed the movie overall up until this point, and I just got out of the cinema thinking, "What the hell was this?" Right? There's still a lot of confusion. Like I had a friend who was confused by the ending, and there's different interpretations of it, but there's nothing to interpret. She kills herself. It's stupid, quite frankly. Uh, and coming from someone who directed Manto, which was a fantastic movie, this this ending just made no sense. Right? I mean, I could talk for a while about why this ending was no good, but I don't think that. I think it's better if you all just actually watch this movie and determine from yourself whether or not you actually enjoyed it, whether or not it's worth it, whether or not the ending was good. Because that ending, head scratcher, like, some will argue that it's a good ending, but those are the people who love twists, and quite frankly, until like there's no hint that this is going on and anything like that. This isn't the case of, say, The Sixth Sense, right? Which had this one twist that he was dead the whole time. In case you haven't seen Sixth Sense, I'm sorry, the movie's been out for 20 years. It's not my fault. But Sixth Sense handled its twist well. It built up to it. There were lots of little hints here and there. There were no such hints here. Now that you know that if you watch this and then watch the movie, you can come up with your own little logics and reasonings as to how this was brought up, this was leading there. But quite frankly, it whether or not it was the twist existed and whether or not the twist didn't exist, it wouldn't have made a difference to what else was going on in the movie. But besides that, I will ignore my grievances with twist endings, and particularly this one when I assess the movie. The acting is fantastic from the entire cast, honestly. It's the cinematography is just fantastic. They tackle a lot of things that you wouldn't expect to see in a Pakistani movie, and it's good. It was building up to be a great story. Um, Ending aside, it was a great story, and if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend you to give it a watch. Since I'm not sure if anybody else has seen the movie in the crew, I think I'll be the only one giving the um, score. And for me, this movie was a 8 out of 10. The ending could have saved it if it had been just a little bit better, but the ending just ruined the entire film for me. And if the ending had just been a bit more reasonable and a bit more logical, it would have been a solid 9 or 9.5 out of 10. It was just a very fantastic movie. So those of you who have seen the movie, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'd love to defend my stance to anybody who would like to hear about it. And if you haven't watched the movie, I definitely recommend you do give this movie a watch. I think it's the only Pakistani movie that's come out this year that's worth watching. And from the last 3 years, actually, that's probably worth watching. And yeah, on that note, see you all next time. And until then, it's time we close the Dhaba. See you.